Welcome to Moss Marketing Mondays, a.k.a. the M3 Podcast. Brought to you by Moss Marketing Group, bringing you everything marketing every Monday. Stay tuned for marketing tips and tricks you can use today. The M3 Podcast, marketing knowledge to help you succeed. Let's get started.
All right. Welcome to Moss Marketing Group and the M3 Podcast are going to start doing a weekly book review. And this is going to be on business books, financial books, mindset, really all kinds of different things. And posted a couple things on social media, and a lot of people have reached out on thoughts of different books that we're reading and things of that nature. So thought we might as well come on here and review them on 10 to 15 minutes each week and give you some insights. So if you want to go read them, you can take our advice, or you don't have to, either or. But let's get rolling today. It's Logan and I, and we are going to be going over Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, so I'm pumped. This is definitely one of my favorite books, and it's been one of the most impactful books for me in my life. Just to kind of start with a brief overview of the book, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's written by Robert Kiyosaki, and it's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad for a reason, obviously, and the reason is he was a kid in Hawaii, and he had his best friend named Mike, and him and Mike go to a certain school where they're a little bit of the outliers. They're what they would call the poor kids in their school. So they get very interested with the concept of money and why other families and other kids are rich and they're not. So Robert's dad is a teacher, or I believe a professor, and he works at a school. Mike's dad is actually very smart when it comes to finances. He runs many companies. So the kids end up turning to Mike's dad for advice, and they seek counsel and kind of guidance from him. And that's where the rich dad, poor dad concept comes from. So Mike's dad, his best friend, ends up being his rich dad. And then Robert's actual dad is the one that he refers to as his poor dad.
I feel like Logan came much more prepared than I did. Read the book a while back. Also did a quick listen over again this week. But what we want to do with this is do kind of just a quick rundown through the chapters, the sections that they have set up, do a quick visual of each one, our thoughts on it, and then an overview of the whole book. That's how we want our kind of structure of these book reviews to go. So let's start right out the gate. Logan kind of hit with chapter 1, kind of what that looks like, everything, the background, the more of the story side of it, and or more of like the introductions part.
Definitely.
But chapter 1, it's rich. The rich don't work for money. And I think that has a lot to do in building business, things of that nature, that so many people are accustomed to a direct trade of time for money.
Yeah.
And what is your thought on chapter 1?
So chapter 1's really easy to read, and one of my favorite parts about this book as well is that when he wrote it, his goal was to make it as simple as possible. So he lays out 6 lessons throughout the book, and then there's a couple extra chapters on kind of all of the lessons that they learned. So his 6 main lessons in life to become financially independent, whatever you want to call it. So obviously, like Dane said, the first one is that the rich don't work for money. I think that's huge, and that's mainly the overall principle of the book, is that if you want to be, free in life, and if you want to have everything that you can, you have to figure out how to make money work for you instead of working for it. One of the main takeaways that I took from the first lesson is that people's lives are controlled by 2 emotions, fear and greed. So people who work for money their entire life, I think they're controlled mainly by fear. And that's the fear of not having money.
100%. We talked about on our coaching call this morning that fear is such a driving force for people not to take that step of what if I don't get that guaranteed check?
Yeah.
And that's a huge, huge emotion that a lot of people I personally don't believe fear is real. Danger is real. Fear is not. It is once again, it's an emotion that's made up in your head.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I that's so true, and even goes as far with investments and stuff. The fear of losing money. I mean, that you got to learn to manage risk and not let it control your life and not be terrified of it.
For sure.
Yeah. So the first chapter is the story of the kids when they're young, like in that perspective. So it's really cool to see, and it really like helps hammer home the perspective of the American dream, like that we're all taught. Yeah. And just like how the school teaches us to be normal and work for 40 years and then retire and live off of, either a pension or the government.
Yeah. And they talk a lot about how society has built this fear into people, where I think it's crazy that people have this sense of fear for paper. That I was talking to someone the other day that 200 years ago, people were just trying to eat, have shelter, and have water. Now everyone has this fear of money. 99% of problems people have is fear of money.
Yeah.
And it talks about that's how society has built it.
Yeah.
Is to have that fear.
And it's not even real.
No. Let's go on chapter 2. Why teach financial literacy?
Yeah. So this is where we get into more of the meat and potatoes. And he kind of breaks down like what he believes the main lessons of financial literacy are. So this is huge. It's why people get stuck in that American dream and work a job that they're miserable at for 40 years.
The rat race.
Why they get caught in the rat race. So he says that the poor and middle class buy liabilities that they believe are assets.
Correct.
And the rich buy assets that give them the money to pay for their liabilities. So it's very simple to break it down this way, but I don't think a lot of people think of it like this. The difference between assets and liabilities. He says that the difference between an asset and a liability is that an asset is something that puts money into your pocket, and a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. So most people think that their biggest asset is their house. That's actually their biggest liability. Because it takes money out of your pocket. Instead of early on going out and buying, all of the cars, the houses, yada, yada, yada that people do, he is more of the mindset of first, it's okay to want those things and you'll get those things. Just delay the gratification a little bit. Go out and buy the assets that will produce that monthly cash flow to pay for those liabilities before you buy them.
That's where I think there's a difference between people having expensive company cars and people having expensive personal cars.
Yeah.
And a company car is paid for by hours of the company, things like that, to where it's not, my truck payment is not made directly by hours I put in. It's, if I take that truck payment number, I don't have to go work X amount of hours to make that payment. And I think that's a lot on the asset and the liability side is, now, if I had an hourly paying job and I went and worked 9 to 5 and I make X amount of dollars an hour and I have an X amount of dollar car payment, I can figure out that 10 hours I put in a week is to pay for that car to drive.
Right.
To where it's crazy when you put it in that like aspect of looking at it, that now all of a sudden you don't want that car payment. So now your car payment over the life of you working, over your 40 years, you spent how many hours of your life just trying to pay for a car?
Yeah.
So or you have a rental property that nets you out $1,000 a month and half of that goes to your car payment. Now you have $500 extra in your pocket and you have a car that's realistically free.
Yeah.
Because your money is working for you.
Yeah. That's a phenomenal way to look at it. Anything that you want to buy in life.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So anything, that's the asset and the liability side, which is, it's a whole different mindset of thinking of having money work for you.
Yeah.
And that's something that isn't taught in school. And they talk about that being taught. We'll move on to lesson number 3 is mind your own business.
Yeah, this one's great. It's one that really kind of hits you over the head when you think about it. So mind your own business, what he means by that is he tells a story of him going and asking a valet driver or someone what business they're in, and they tell them, I'm in the business of valeting cars. It's like, okay, sure, no, you are, but you're not. So the difference between when he says mind his own business, he's talking about there's a key difference between your profession and your business. So if you're in a job that you work to get a paycheck, that's your profession. Your business revolves around your asset column, not your income column. Mm-hmm. That's the key difference there. I mean, it's something that a lot of people don't think about, really.
No, a lot of people don't think about if you have 20 rental properties and you have a job also, the business is the assets that are coming in. That's money that's always there.
Yeah.
And that's, once again, goes into that just financial literacy. That's why people get stuck in the rat race. Society is built to keep people in the rat race. You have to have more people in the rat race to work.
Yeah.
And having business outside of it and having those things control, it's mind your own business. Exactly word for word.
And he defines any business that he would put in that category as something that doesn't require you present for it to make money. So he has his list here. It's stocks, bonds, income generating real estate, notes, royalties from intellectual property, and anything else that has value, produces income, appreciates, or has a ready market.
Yeah. So it's get those things that you're, once again, not trading direct time for money.
Right.
We will go on to lesson 4, the history of taxes and the power of corporations.
Yeah. This one is more of like a strategy type thing that a lot of people don't understand. So he says that the difference between his rich dad and his poor dad is that his rich dad just played the game smart, and he did it through corporations, and that he says that that's the biggest secret of the rich. So
I think corporations and taxes, like there's a different game that is being played when it comes to taxes and making money and spending money, where most people that, when it says rich dad, poor dad doesn't look at buying a vehicle to depreciate it on taxes, doesn't look at buying real estate to get out of paying the income tax, doesn't look at all these different tax ways that you can keep from giving the money to the government. And poor dad just plays the game of giving the money to the government all the time. When people look at people that are wealthy, they say, why does this person have all these nice cars? Why do they have all this real estate? Why do they have all these? They're actually doing that to get out of paying taxes. And the tax break that they are getting most of the time is almost counteracting what that item cost. So that's something that once you start learning how taxes works, once you start learning that side of stuff with corporations, a lot of times those items aren't being bought out of, people think that is a straight up money out, which isn't always true.
Yeah. And he puts it very, very simply, 1, 2, 3, business owners who have a corporation, first they earn money, then they spend money, and then they pay taxes on what's left. Employees who work for corporations, they pay taxes on that top dollar, and then they spend what's left.
Yeah. So if a company makes $1 million and they spend out 800,000 of it, you're paying taxes on 200. Then as an individual, you can also write things off at that level. So you're not paying taxes on $1 million. So that's the difference of spending money as a corporation, as a business, and figuring out taxes on, which there's a lot more on taxes than is in this book. So
and he gives a good reference to a book on corporations that he learned a lot of it from. It's by Garrett Sutton. He has a book on corporations.
Cool. All right. We are on to lesson number 5. The rich invent money. Yeah.
And this is, I don't want to say this is one of those mindset things that you either have or you don't, but this is probably one of the hardest lessons in this book to learn and grasp if you don't already think this way. It's about seeing opportunity and taking advantage of opportunities when they present themselves to you. So in example that happened to them when they were young kids is they worked at a grocery store that Mike's dad owned for free. And they used to be able to buy a comic book for 10 cents back then. So that when they got paid, they would take their 10 cents and go buy comic books. But then they worked for free. That's the deal they worked out with Mike's dad. So instead of just kind of watching that comic book stand and not doing anything about it, they realized that the store was cutting up the old comic books that they didn't sell and just throwing them away and giving them back to the distributor. So they end up finding the guy who, they're like 10-year-old kids. They end up finding the guy who distributes the comic books and brings them. And he's like, hey, can we have the old copies? And he's like, yeah, you can have them as long as you don't resell them. So they open up a library and they start charging these kids like 10 cents a day to come in for 2 hours and read comic books.
Yeah, and it's seizing that opportunity, seeing the opportunity, and you can invent money. And as crazy as that sounds, it is a mindset, but it is something that you find a void in market and you capitalize on that spot. You can invent money.
Yeah.
And somebody invented the space of selling electric cars. Like, that was something that somebody comes up with. They are capitalizing on it. They are getting paid now. They invented money. So any new space, when somebody created TV, somebody invented money, they said, hey, I think I can put this item out there that people can watch television on all the time, and they created a demand for it. They saw the void. They created the demand. They invented money.
Yeah.
So I think, there's opportunity out there all day, every day. We just went over this on a coaching call about opportunities that the amount of them that people pass in a day is crazy.
I wrote down, if you're the kind of person who is waiting for the right thing to happen, you might wait for a long time. It's like waiting for all the traffic lights in a 5-mile road to be green before leaving for your trip.
Yeah, that's the truth. And number 6 is going to be work to learn, don't work for money. And I like our process we've been rocking with. You keep it rolling.
This is one that, oh man, so many people struggle with this. They can't see past today. They can't see past the time clock. Job stands for just over broke. And a lot of people just continue to do the same thing over and over, hating it. Whereas no matter what job you're working, there is an opportunity for you to learn from that job, which if you come in with the mindset every day that I'm going to learn something from my job today, or I'm going to learn something by what I'm doing, then eventually you're going to have the skill set that's going to help you get to that either A, next position in your company because you're going to start doing a better job, or B, to that actual company and job that you want to do.
Yeah, and I think that goes a lot into people investing in themselves. That I feel that people that do invest in themselves by reading, by finding a mentor, by finding something to help them better themselves and learn every day, you're not going to become a Steve Jobs or any of those individuals if you don't learn. Those individuals are learning till the day that they die. And you have to be always learning and progressing. And I'm big on just progression is happiness.
Yeah.
But if you're learning and you're getting better every single day, it's really hard not to be happy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, don't work for money. That's the rat race. Like,
it is.
That's what he goes through. This whole book is about getting out of that, setting yourself up to where you're not directly trading your time for dollars and cents an hour. Because if you make $12 an hour, you are pretty much saying that you are willing to give away an hour of your time for $12.
Yeah.
So if you get up today and they say, hey, you're going to die in a car wreck on the way home tonight and you're going to get $12 an hour up until then, would you take it? Like, that's where you have to. It has to be something where all of a sudden you have that nice car that you've always wanted and you trade zero amount of time for it. It's you're not directly working for money, but you have to learn those things to get to that spot.
Absolutely. It's a big game. If you really think about it, life is no different than a video game. It's just very real.
Which I want to tag the game in here too. I know he made a game.
Yeah, it's
I don't know what it's called.
You can find it at richdad.com. It's called the Cash Flow game. So he has Cash Flow 101 and
you can play Cash Flow, yeah.
Yeah. Cash Flow 101, and then there's another game called Cash Flow 201 or 202, something like that. So those are good to check out. But one of the things that I took from lesson 6 that just like kind of made me stop and think. Like I stopped reading for a second, and it's kind of like, why do you play the game, or like why is this important? And he says, just as the rich can afford better education, the rich will be able to keep themselves alive, while those who have little wealth die. And my thought process with that is like, if I get sick or someone in my family gets sick, like I've got to be in a position to take care of them.
Yeah, and I know money doesn't bring happiness, but it makes life easier.
Yeah,
it truly does, and in a lot of aspects, when you take out, you're not worried about eating, you're not worried about shelter, you're not worried about water, you're not worried about health problems can come up at anyone at any price point. There's no one that has so much money that they don't have health issues. Right. But it's a big difference when you do have that health problem that you can go to the best doctor possible. Yeah. You can spend that money. You can afford the medicine that's needed. So finances do come into a play at some point.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's a very true statement. And I mean, even Alex Hormozi, he talks about like, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
And it all plays into a factor if you're going to be stuck in the race or if you're going to do something to get out of it.
Yeah.
And I think that is, I don't know what time frame we hit on this. Where are we at?
Probably around 10 minutes.
Is that 10 minutes? I feel like
probably.
That was fast.
I know. It was fast. There's a couple more chapters here without giving away the entire book. But
I know.
The 7th chapter is called Overcoming Obstacles. So this is where it kind of dives into a little more strategy and like, what do you do next?
Yeah.
And he says that the primary difference between rich and poor people is that the rich know how to manage fear. And that goes back to what we talked about in the first lesson. And then he said that once you become financially literate, the top 5 reasons that people still fail are 1, fear, 2, cynicism, 3, laziness, 4, bad habits, and 5, arrogance. He kind of gives his advice for breaking out of those patterns. He talks about Texas, and this is random, but he talks about Texas a lot, and saying, so obviously everyone at the Alamo knew that they were going to die. Like they decided instead of surrendering that they were just going to stay with the fort, and that's why they say, remember the Alamo. And in Texas, they have a saying that says, if you're going to go broke, go big. So like give it 100%, give it all that you got.
I like that. I'm going to put that on a wall somewhere.
Yeah.
So chapter 8 is getting started. So I think that, like we said, we don't want to give away the whole book. We want you to go read it. That's where we do want your feedback on this. Do you have anything else? I do want to keep these kind of shorter so you can listen to them. Download the book on Audible or buy the book, something of that nature. We want I didn't really have a direct path of how this was all going to look or work out, and we want your feedback too. If you want to know more, tell us. We'll make them longer. We can go more into depth.
Yeah.
Or if you want them shorter, tell us. But anything else you want to touch on?
No, I think chapter 8, you just have to read the book, and it's very actionable.
We'll give you a little piece that you have to go get.
Yeah.
But super excited about the book reviews, and I think this might just be a Logan and I thing.
Maybe. So so one last thing, we'll kind of set up a little structure here, end everyone with like one, like, not, it doesn't have to be one sentence, but like one, collective takeaway from the book.
Biggest takeaway on this is I feel like this book is very big on time versus money. And that's a big thing that, I'm a big pusher of, is the asset, the liability type deal where I don't want to trade my life for a certain dollars and cents, and I want money working for me. And this is huge on learning how to having money work for you, understanding the difference, and not be stuck in that race forever.
Yeah.
Because before you know it, you get stuck in that rat race and then it's over.
Yeah.
So
I think mine's the same. Have money work for you. Obviously, it's something that my dad told me very early often with our real estate company as well. But I think for me, and this might sound a little funny, but have other people pay for your stuff. buy assets and get money from your money and have the life that you want using other people's money.
Yeah. I think that's going to close out the first MMG book review on Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Go get it. We will have a link below to purchase and to download. And this will be for subscribers to the M3 podcast only.
Yep.
So make sure you're subscribed if you're watching this, and you already are. So look forward to the future. That's it. Peace.